Hey there, Twisters. Today we're going to talk about the biggest offseason need for each of the teams in the Metropolitan Division. So by offseason need, I'm talking about key trades that need to be made, whether that's to clear up cap space, get somebody else in return, stockpile assets, free agency signings, all that good stuff. So we're going to go through that team by team here. And of course, let me know your boldest predictions for these teams down in the comments down below. I'll be as specific as I can with these two. I'm not just going to say upgrade the defense and move on to the next team. And assuming that you guys like this video, I'll make another video just like this for each of the other three divisions. All right, let's go team by team. We're going to go top to bottom based on the standings, and we're going to start with the Carolina Hurricanes. That's my favorite team in the East. So for the Hurricanes, I decided to choose putting together a goaltending tandem. So right now, the only goaltender under contract is Pyotr Kochetkov. He did play pretty well for them last year. Then again, it is the Carolina defense, so they can make just about anybody look good. But Ranta and Freddie Anderson are both UFAs. Now, those guys are in their 30s. They certainly do have some injury history. A lot of goaltenders do, but in particular, Ranta. And Anderson, he also has had his spats with injury. He's played very well for them in his time with Carolina, but you know what? I kind of compare him, if you watch football, sort of to the Kirk Cousins of the NHL. He's good, but he can only get you so far. So I think that they need to consider, looking into that great goaltending market in the offseason. Lots of goalies available, right? Hellbuck, John Gibson. There are other names out there, certainly. And I think they need to go after somebody new. The Hurricanes are just a team that needs to get it done with defense and goaltending, because offensively, they still haven't been able to really break through throughout a deep playoff run. Do I think Kochetkov could be part of the goaltending tandem going forward? I do, but I still think they need a proven number one, or at least a 1A to what Kochetkov could provide as a 1B early in his career. New Jersey Devils, this is the other team where I'll talk about goaltending. So right now, the tandem is Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid. Blackwood is an RFA, and I don't see them, I don't see him getting re-signed. Again, Vanacek kind of reminds me of Anderson. He's a good goaltender. He's more of that in the regular season, though. He hasn't been particularly good in his playoff career, and Schmid needed to come in relief of him during the playoffs. Vanacek, I think he could be a really good 1B out there, but that's kind of about it. I still think that they need a true number one goaltender if they're going to make a serious run, because otherwise they have a lot of good cornerstones in that group. They got to re-sign Timo Meier, of course, but I expect that's going to happen. So again, they have an opportunity to upgrade their goaltending situation, and Schmidt could possibly be part of that. He played 18 games in the regular season, looked really good, looked amazing in that Rangers series, so he could be part of the future there. And then one other thing I want to bring up here is they brought in Travis Green as an assistant because Andrew Burnett left to go to the Predators. The team really did blossom quite well under that group of coaches this past season. So can they keep this going even though they've lost one of their assistants? Now we're going to get to the New York Rangers. So I didn't find anything that's like a desperate need for them right now, but I did notice that they still are kind of missing another presence in the middle six. Now that Kane and Tarasenko probably aren't going to be signed just because of how tight the cap situation could be for the Rangers. They have to re-sign Keandre Miller and Alexis Lafreniere, and that's not going to be particularly cheap. I think that what they could do is I think they can move Barclay Goodrow. It's going to be very difficult. He's got 4 years left on his deal at $3.6 million. He's got a 15 no-trade list, and he's 30 years old. So if you're going to offload him, probably going to be to a team that is looking to, spend to the cap floor. And Goodrow, that's pretty expensive for a guy who could be who's a fourth line center, right? He's a good player. As a Sharks fan, I've seen him come through in the clutch for sure. But yeah, I think that if you're able to get a couple million back, you can help upgrade your middle six, and you'll also have room for a backup goaltender because Halak is also a UFA. Granted, Rangers fans, let me know your thoughts. There is Brennan Othmann, right? Maybe the top prospect for the Rangers. Could he get a crack next year at the club and make the team on opening day and find his way into the middle six? I don't know. You tell me. That was just one thing that jumped out. All right, New York Islanders. Speaking of the middle six, they need more talent up front. The center position looks good with Horvat and Nelson, but when you look at the wings, right, Josh Bailey, he has definitely fallen off. He's got 1 year left at $5 million. And so, again, can you deal him somewhere else for a chance to free up cap space and bring in a top six winger? The Islanders do have some assets. They have their 2024 and 25 first round picks They have all their seconds. But yeah, they need an opportunity to upgrade at that position and just in general free up some cap space. So then that way they can figure out their backup goaltending situation. Sorokin has 1 year left on his deal, and Varlamov is now a UFA, and he's done a hell of a lot for the franchise so far. Now we get to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Busy offseason ahead. They bring in Kyle Dubas, right? They've got about $20 million in projected cap. They do have some UFAs. Among them include Tristan Jarry and Jason Zucker and Brian Dumoulin. I'm not sure if they're going to bring him back. But yeah, I've talked about this before. I think the Penguins need to kind of rebuild their bottom six, but their biggest weakness right now is at third line center. Now, the third line center is Jeff Carter, at least on the depth chart right now. So they could upgrade at that position, certainly. And so now that they have Dubas and Spezza, hear me out here. What about bringing in Ryan O'Reilly, right? He was a great fit in Toronto, and they didn't have to give up all that much to get him. Now he's a UFA, right? O'Reilly's 32 years old, so the Penguins would probably still have a record for the oldest center group in NHL history, but I still think he has a couple of productive years, and especially in a third-line role, he could definitely thrive in that position. His defense is some of the best in the NHL. I think that they could maybe squeeze out a 3-year deal for him. I know they have some other veterans out there like Granlund and Petrie whose contracts aren't the most team friendly. So I don't know if there's going to be a suitor for either of those players, but if they can get a little bit more of cap space for that, bring in O'Reilly, and then of course take care of their goaltending situation, then yeah, they could still find a way to be competitive in the next year. All right, Washington Capitals, another team that fell off this past season and needs to upgrade fast, so then that way they can compete for a cup with Ovechkin, even though it's going to be really tough, right, with that aging veteran group. But Evgeny Kuznetsov was reported by a Russian outlet to want a trade. He's declined to comment. So anytime there's any sort of buzz around that, really, I do think it's best to just deal the player and rip off the Band-Aid. Kuznetsov, his production has fallen off a little bit as well, and it's going to be a little bit difficult considering he has a 15-team no-trade list. He's under contract 2 more years at $7.8 million, but there are teams out there looking for a center. For example, I've talked about the Colorado Avalanche needing a second-line center. They also have Anthony Mantha on the books at 1 year at $5.7 million. So if they want to retool and get competitive again fast, they're going to need to find a way to free up some cap space right now. The situation looks a little bit more difficult for them. Strom's played very well in the top 6 as a center. Backstrom, though, I just don't think we can expect him to be that all-star Backstrom going forward, especially at this point in his career. For the Philadelphia Flyers, it's not really a dire need, but there's a great opportunity for them to deal Kevin Hayes. So Frank Saravalli just 2 days ago reported that Flyers general manager Danny Briere was, quote, potentially close to a deal involving Kevin Hayes in the last few days, end quote. So some of the teams who are reportedly interested in Hayes, you've got the Hurricanes and the Wild, 2 teams that I think definitely could use some center help, as do the Blue Jackets. We'll talk about them in just a second, in addition to the Dallas Stars and Detroit Red Wings. The situation's a little difficult because Hayes does carry a 12-team no-trade list and is signed to 3 more years at $7.1 million. That's a lot for a guy who put up 54 points last year, albeit on not that good of a Flyers team, let's be honest. But by moving Hayes, that could free up some salary cap space. Now, granted, they also have Travis Konechny, who did break out for 31 goals this past season. He's rumored to be a target of interest for the Red Wings, but he's still in the prime of his career. He's still productive. I think there is a very good case to trade him and get good assets, but if Hayes does fetch some of that, then there's not as much pressure to move Konechny. You could always entertain moving him at the trade deadline or even next offseason because he'll be on the books for 1 more year at an affordable cap hit. And there's also the possibility of trading Carter Hart, but again, Hayes is somebody that isn't necessarily part of the vision of this team going forward. So yeah, they should definitely consider moving him. And lastly, we get to the Columbus Blue Jackets, and as I mentioned earlier, they are needing some help at center. Considering the offseason moves already for Provorov and for Damon Severson, they look like they're a team that wants to get competitive while Gaudreau is still in his prime, while Laine is still in his prime. So to acquire a number 1 center would be fantastic for them. Do I think Kevin Hayes is a 1 center? Not so much anymore, but even so, there are going to be some other options that they're going to explore in the offseason here. Could they get Elias Lindholm? We've heard him being talked about quite a bit. He's only under contract for 1 more year at $4.8 million. And so a guy who's put up a 40-goal season and has played really well in all 3 zones. And going the other way, they do have prospects. They do have draft picks. They have some young wingers out there that could be dealt back to Calgary to kind of help them reset if that's the direction that Craig Conroy wants to go in. And some people will point out the goaltending situation. I think center is still more of an immediate need. We'll have to see how Tarasov could perform in a first full season. Merzlikins does need to absolutely bounce back. hopefully new goaltending coach Nicholas Backstrom, who was great with the Minnesota Wild in his career, could help with that. Anyway, guys, what do you think of my sort of takes on this? What are your boldest predictions for teams in the Metropolitan Division? Let me know down in the comments down below, and stick around for more coverage of the 2023 NHL offseason, trades, free agency. I got to set up a live stream for the draft as well. Let's hope that we can make that happen. Anyway, guys, leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you around for more content. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm Nick. I'll catch you twisters later. Ciao for now.